Hey guys, welcome to the Anatomy Coloring Guide, the Skull Part 3. I'm going to try not to go too fast, but I apologize in advance if I do go a little fast. This is my third time recording this one, so it's all sort of starting to run together. The first time my daughter was making too much noise, and the second time my computer ran out of storage about halfway through and I didn't realize. So third time is a charm. So let's start with the Vomer bone. It is right here. It makes up that bottom portion of this wall inside our nasal passages. So that top portion was the perpendicular plate, and the bottom portion in the front is the Vomer bone. Posteriorly, if you're looking at it from the back, it's pretty much that entire wall. So again, there it is, Vomer bone. Inferior nasal concha, I'm sorry, that was a terrible circle. Inferior nasal concha, just go ahead and write that. We'll reference the facial bones video. It's not easily seen here. Nasal bones, easily seen from the front there. You have two, left and right, makes up the bridge of your nose. You can see it in this photo as well. You can see the left nasal bone right there. Lacrimal bone is pretty close by, right there. Maxillary bone is a pretty large facial bone. It's right here. It touches the frontal bone, the nasal bone, the lacrimal bone, the zygomatic bone, the mando. It's a large bone. So there it is. Let's go ahead and label some of the processes. Let's do dark green here. The part of the maxillary bone that comes into contact with the frontal bone is called the frontal process. To label the Palatine process, I think what we should actually do first is label the Palatine bone. So that is a Palatine bone right there. You can see it here too in the mid-sagittal view. And this front part is the maxillary bone. So now that we can see where the Palatine bone is, the Palatine process is the part of the maxillary bone that comes into contact with the Palatine bone. So we can label it right there, Palatine process. You can also label it right here. The alveolar processes are the parts of the maxilla that come in contact with the teeth. So we'll do those in black. Alveolar processes. Anterior nasal spine is here. It's this point sticking out of the maxilla. The bottom of your nose attaches there. Let's go to the next slide. We actually have 3 slides for the facial bones. Palatine bone we labeled previously. We labeled it, it looks like pink maybe. So we'll use the same color here. There it is. It has a structure on it that's tough to see here, but pretty easy to see on our other videos. Right there, called the Palatine process. It's a little point, I'm sorry, posterior nasal spine. It's a little point sticking out posteriorly, just like the anterior nasal spine poked out anteriorly. The next bone is the Zygomatic bone, right there, kind of your cheekbone. The frontal process is the portion of that bone that comes into contact with the frontal bone, which is right there. The portion of the zygomatic bone that comes into contact with the temporal bone is right here, and it's called the temporal process. Oops, I didn't label. And the part of this bone that comes into contact with the maxillary bone, right there, is called the maxillary process. Now, on a lab quiz, what I would be looking for would be for you to say frontal process of the zygomatic bone, temporal process of the zygomatic bone, maxillary process of the zygomatic bone. I apologize, I know it's a lot to write, but some of these structures there's more than one of, so I just want to make sure you're talking about the right bone. Lastly, mandible and hyoid. I apologize in advance, or I guess in retroactively apologize. I did not do a hyoid bone video using the Essential Anatomy app. I did not talk about this bone. I don't plan to go back. It's so simple that I probably won't. But if you guys would like one, just shoot me a message and I'll do it. So let's do that one first. It's really simple. So the greater horns are these two larger horns in the back posteriorly, and the greater horn. And then the lesser horns are in the front, and they are smaller. Okay, this here on the left is the mandible. The head is this whole portion here. And I see I left that mark there from earlier. So that whole portion is the head. The thinner portion underneath right here is the neck, which makes sense, head, neck. The condyle is right here. Now, it looks like I'm just labeling the head, but I'm not. I'm specifically labeling the top of the head, so kind of like the scalp of the head, if we want to keep that analogy going. So head, neck, and then the top part, which I labeled over here, is the condyle. That's the actual articular surface that articulates with the mandibular fossa on the temporal bone. Okay, next is the coronoid process here. In between the head and neck and coronoid process is a notch. Maybe we'll label that in, oops, it didn't change colors. We'll label that in green. That's the notch. The ramus will sort of, you can do a better job on your notes hopefully, is sort of this region, the proximal region of the mandible, whereas the body is more of this distal region. Yikes. Some sloppy coloring. And then the angle in between the two right here is called the angle. So guys, that is it. We are done labeling our skull notes. If you have any questions, reach out to me. I'm happy to help any way I can. Remember, there are more detailed videos for each of these structures posted, so just go ahead and take a look at all those. It's up to you how you want to use these notes. Personally, if it were me, and it was once, when I took anatomy, we did this, and I really, actually, I liked it. I think a lot of students liked it once they understood how to use this idea of color coding your notes. What I would do is I would go through this and label it, and as I'm doing it, I would be watching the other videos. So I would label the temporal bone, and then I'd watch the temporal bone video. I kind of look back and forth and make sure I'm comfortable with my labeling and I'm comfortable with where all the structures are. And I do that for the whole thing. That way you can kind of go back and look through your notes, jot things down, talk about how one structure relates to another, that sort of a thing. And you kind of have a quick reference without having to go back and watch the video or Google image something. You just kind of have a quick reference for when you're studying or quizzing yourself. I'm going to admit it probably this process does not work that great for the skull. Just because there are so many tiny little foramina and little notches and things that these kind of basic sketches don't really help us visualize. I think you'll find it comes in more handy on some of the other bones, but I still like it for this too. So I would encourage you to do it. I would encourage you to watch the other videos as much as you can. And again, please reach out to me if you need anything. Thanks, guys.